Hey everyone, this is going to be a pretty interesting conversation. I'm already feeling it. And part of it is let's talk about if you or someone you know has experienced conservative evangelicalism. Did I say that right?
Yes,
Okay.
good.
With fear, shame, and judgment as the main influence, and you're looking for a way to shift and heal, then you don't want to miss this conversation.
Welcome to Awakening Soul Divinity, your sacred space for deep healing and transformation. Listen to inspiring conversations with healing experts, spiritual guides, and teachers as we explore ancient wisdom, modern healing, and powerful stories of change. I'll also share practical insights from my personal journey, from spiritual crisis to inner purpose. Whether you're seeking to overcome anxiety, embrace your true nature, or awaken your higher self, this podcast offers guidance to help you transform your life and elevate collective consciousness.
So I want to welcome Stephanie to Awakening Soul Divinity. And I'm so excited that you decided to join me on this journey. Hey, Stephanie.
Hi, Caroline. Thank you so much. It's been lovely
Absolutely. Absolutely.
chatting with you and getting to know you over the past year or so, I think.
Yeah, well, almost we're coming up on it. Yeah, for sure. And I'm just grateful I got to meet you because we were actually in a Facebook group that I started together and never know what kind of beautiful souls you're going to meet. So here's one. Okay, so let's get started. So could you briefly share a catalyst or challenging experience that led you onto the path you're on today?
Oh, there was quite a few. I think it was just building and building for years because
Hmm.
as a kid, I would question some of the stuff that I was raised in. I would ask, can't we just love people? Because I was raised in a religion that was very much against groups. It was kind of like us against the world. We were told everyone else was the world.
Is
And
that what you had mentioned about the fundamentalist conservative? Like we just talked about that fundamentalist conservative evangelical. Is that what
yes,
that was? Is that's
yes,
okay. That's okay that we go down that word with the words.
yes. Well,
Okay.
I was okay. So there's like the extreme fundamentalist. I was fundamentalist light. So I was a
Okay.
super, it's very tricky when you get into more of these spaces where people say, well, you weren't fundamentalist, we were. And it's like, okay. But still, so so I remember just asking, can we just love people? And my dad would start kind of saying, no, we need to tell people that they're going to hell. Um, and you kind of turn it around and make fun of me. And I just thought, well, okay. But it just seemed off. I always felt off about it. And I had anxiety for most of my life.
Hmm.
And now I know part of that, I mean, it was other things as well, but part of that was always didn't sit right with me.
Hmm.
And seeing people of different religions or no religion, and they just seemed healthier and happier than me,
Hmm.
who was going to heaven, I thought, well, something's off. But I wanted to be the good girl. I would earnestly seek God. I prayed and I read my Bible like they said I needed to. Um, so I was always searching though.
Hmm.
And I moved to Toronto when I was in my 30s. And it was out, I met more people from different cultures and different faiths and more, and I grew up conservative Christian and I met liberal Christians. And I was like, oh, you're not allowed to be liberal and be a Christian because I was raised you had to be conservative. And it was an awakening
Hmm.
then. And as I got more and more just questioning and meeting more people and just, I wanted to learn more about the world. I wanted to learn more about people's experiences because what I knew was this much,
Hmm.
right? And uh, so then when you get into the more political aspects of as well, with Christians being tied to a certain group, I started to question that. Like, there's something off here. Um, and yeah, so during COVID was really when I had time to start searching and looking into the things I wasn't allowed to learn about, like
Mm,
feminism. I was told that was evil. I was like, but as females, like, well, I always felt squashed. And then I started getting angry as I started questioning and finding out, oh, they took out this woman in the Bible and these powerful women stories that we were not given. Um, and yeah, and so I just started learning more about that, and I started feeling better. I started feeling more at peace, and the more I let go of this anger and being against all these people and the hatred about them, I go, oh, I
mhm,
feel like a burden's being lifted,
mhm,
which is
mhm.
what we were told that we had in Christ. And I never had it. So it just, it's been a lot of different things, but it was just really getting out under that control
Yeah.
because I believed everything my dad taught me. I thought my dad knew everything. And then I learned on my own. I was like, oh, no, my dad's over here. And there's so much more to the world than what he gave me. So
Yeah.
and the more I remember asking a friend, am I allowed to learn this? Like I was told this was evil, like just learning about law of attraction, that kind of stuff. They say don't get into that. That's new age, that's evil. But I started feeling better. I started
Mhm.
feeling like I could love people easier. I started healing and my friend said, "How could that be evil?" And that's when I knew if you're healing and you're headed towards a more loving, peaceful, freeing place, you are not in the wrong direction. You are headed in the right, you are headed in a healing
Right.
direction.
Right. Right.
And that's not evil.
No. And this is obviously this is a touchy subject for quite a few people, including me. Um, and there's so much information coming out now about how we were raised by, our ancestors through the generations into believing these things. And it's not even, it goes way back. You can go back, like I've been watching podcasts and stuff talking or giving information about going back to when they wrote the Bible. There's books missing out of the Bible. There's all kinds of information out there. And if you don't believe that, what I've found for myself, that's okay. But the thing about it is that there are people who have experienced what you've gone through, Stephanie, and it's not fun. And I even got a taste of it. So I'm going to share a couple of things that I've gone through just to give you an idea of how similar that is within the realm of, I guess best way to say it is dogmatic religion and not
Yeah.
connective. Because what's crazy to me is that all religions are based on love. That's the underlying feature. God is about love, not angry. It's all about love. Okay, you might have learned something different, but that's what I came to when I did my research. That's what it kept coming to. It's like, well, what's the basis of Islam? Love. What's the basis of, whatever? Love. What's the basis? So I was like, okay. And I've been doing this since probably I was in my I want to say my 20s, my mid to late 20s. I started getting curious. And the reason I got curious was because my first husband was raised independent Baptist. And
Yeah.
so when he took me to Texas, we went to I don't know if it was his church or his family's church or whatever. And I had just been baptized. And keep this in mind, at the beginning, I was raised Jewish. So I was very curious about all these different things and wanted to know more. And the first weekend, the first Sunday that we went, everybody was like so sweet and kind. And they're like, how you doing? And welcome. And yeah. And then I think that was the weekend that I was actually baptized, right? And the weekend after we went, the second time, and the preacher's standing at the pulpit and he is yelling. And I was like, he wasn't doing that last weekend. He's yelling, and I felt like it was at me. And he's like, "You're going to hell if you don't believe in Jesus." And I was like, wait, what? Because I was raised Jewish, right? So that was my experience. My grandfather, like you were talking about, you've got people who around you that you're seeing, which is out of your environment that you grew up in. So it's different. So my grandfather, who was Jewish, was the kindest, sweetest, most gentle person on the face of this planet, way more than this guy who's screaming at me, pointing his finger at me, right? And I was like, well, how is it that I'm going to hell or my grandfather's going to hell if we don't believe in Jesus? And you're screaming at me, and my grandfather was like kind and gentle and loving. What? This is not making sense. This does not compute, you know. So that was my first experience of recognizing exactly what you're talking about. Now, what was really crazy was years later, I went on a, I don't know why, because I was raised Jewish, but I didn't follow the religion after my bat mitzvah, which is at 13. And years later, I think I was in my 30s, something like that. I went to this Jewish singles weekend in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I was surrounded by very like Hasidic Jews and Orthodox Jews and all the rest of that type, because I was raised conservative. And in that space, it's way different, right? And so somebody took me into a bookstore, and they walked me up to a shelf and they showed me the Kabbalah. Now the Kabbalah is about mysticism. Right. And they said to me, "Don't let anybody know that I'm showing you this in this group because they don't like it." So what I started to consider with all of this stuff is like there's sections, there's sects. Every religion has broken up because people could not believe what they were being taught, and so they split off. Catholicism was like that. Christianity has been like that. Judaism has been like that. But interestingly enough, all religions have mysticism. Just want to put that out there. You know, I'm not, every religion has mysticism, and every religion talks about love. And even the Bible has a whole section of red ink print that talks Jesus. That's all he ever talked about, right? I mean, there's all that in there. So what we get taught is not necessarily, like you were saying, that's not necessarily what's going on. So maybe we need to just kind of take a different, or question it, take a different look at it, wonder.
That's what's so beautiful about like bringing in philosophy as well, bringing in critical thinking. And I know there are people, and I have some in my own family, because of some of the movies that are made by Christians that make you fear the world. So it's very funny because I was raised in fear to fear the world, and yet we were told the Bible says do not fear. So then when you had anxiety and you'd be fearing, they're like, do not fear. Ah, Paul says do not fear, or Jesus said whatever. And then they're teaching you fear constantly. And they're fearful of the secular universities because of certain movies that would show you a philosophy professor. You believe in God, you're going to fail. I'm going to embarrass you in front of the whole class and you fail. And so people are watching this, and this is why critical thinking is so important. They believe this is true. Oh, my kid cannot go to secular university. They cannot take science. They're going to teach them evolution. They cannot take philosophy. They're going to make them not believe in God. That's not happening.
No. God,
but they're taught this. I was taught this.
Wow.
So I was terrified. So
can I throw something in real quick about the philosophy thing? I took philosophy 101.
Yeah.
And guess what my teacher, the first thing my professor said when he got up in front of the class, do you see that chair that you're sitting on? How do you know it's really there? That's what he
Yeah.
said. He didn't say anything about God being, yeah, okay, that's not, yeah.
But
Go ahead.
okay, there's a movie called God's Not Dead where they actually have this guy but they make it so scary.
Yeah, I can't
And
even
the Christian and they buy into I bought into it. You
yeah.
buy into it because it's this movie and there's this music swelling.
How old were you when you saw it?
In my 20s.
Okay, but
And
this
they've
is
made like a gazillion more. They keep
yeah, and
making these.
that's
And they're
because
not good. I'm sorry, they're
yeah,
terrible. Like
yeah.
these movies are terrible.
And I don't remember the name of the movie, but I've seen one similar to that about how women are supposed to be submissive to their husbands or
Oh
whatever.
yeah.
That's yeah. So
And that's that and I have been in those circles where those preaching was taught. And then I've been in ones where they're like, not so much. Like, yes, women can go to university and but it's always comes back to really you you're meant to get married and have babies. So me as a single person still in my 40s, that was always tough
mhm.
because I was like, well, what good am I if I'm single? Well, you should get married, Stephanie. Well, but find a good man. Well, I don't see any. I'm sorry. And I wasn't meant to. Like, I still want to get married, but I wasn't meant to previously because I know the kind of guy I liked in my 20s, I would become a shell of the person I am, Caroline. I wouldn't have grown. I would have just crumbled
Mhm.
because I was not strong. I was not taught to be a strong woman. I was not allowed to. And that's also what's harmful in the church is the patriarchy because it's man first, then woman. And
Yes.
it's like, well, but we are human beings too, whether we have children or not, whether we're married or not. I am a human being deserving of respect because I am a human being, and that is all
Mhm.
of us.
Mhm. I
So what I want to also add to that is bringing in nuance.
mm,
So you asked me what was one of the things that changed my life was also going to university. Now I went to Christian university, but I took philosophy and critical thinking was the class that was the hardest and the most wonderful thing I ever took because I learned what fallacies were and I realized I was so stuck in those because I was raised in them.
mhm.
So when I discovered that there's such a thing as nuance, it changed my life because I grew up in black or white, all or nothing kind of thinking. And that's fallacious reasoning.
That's not
So
that's not good. That like there is no such thing as black and white all or nothing.
no.
That's just not a thing. So that's a big I've had that issue.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
And that's what's so beautiful about just learning from different people. Like you could
Mm,
people say, well, you weren't stuck. You could have learned from different teachers, but there was always a caveat. If you're going to read a book by a Buddhist or by a New Age person or what, be careful, be very careful. No, I'm allowed to learn and expand my horizons, and maybe I take something from that because, hey, I love this aspect. This helps me. That's a beautiful thing. I love that. That's helped me grow, be, other than just this narrow piece of thing I was allowed to believe in,
right, right. And when you
which
get
kept me
narrowed,
anxious.
yeah, right. And but when you get life doesn't life like that. Life doesn't go narrow. If you go into the life is expansive. Go into the forest. Look at the old forests. You know, they were huge. The Amazon, what even the Amazon, what's left of it from cutting the trees down, that's a whole nother conversation. But even that is expansive. You know, everything in life and nature and in God and higher power and on the earth, Mother Earth, everything, the universe. Look at the universe. Look at the universes. There's multiverses. You know, think about, I listen to this one guy and he talks about, think about the flat earthers, you know? I mean, if you see this big ball, this marble looking ball in the sky and it's round, how can you even still think that way? So there's so many different ways of thinking, as many different ways of thinking as there are people. So how can one way be the way if there's so many of those the ways? Because lots of religions have done that. It's like my way is the way. Well, how can your way be the way and this way be the way and this way? It doesn't.
Because ours is the way, Carolyn.
Right. Well, that's it. It's like, no. Okay, so here's what the way is. The
What
human
is that? Is that circular reasoning? Wait,
right.
can't
I don't know what
remember.
that is. But you know what? And I'm going to throw something in here because I think this was, I want to go back to what you said about the being a woman, you know. Um, I just learned of a woman through actually a psychic. Whoa, here we go. Through a psychic that I just did an interview on, and she said that she gave me a name, and while we were talking, when she gave me the name, I looked it up, and it gave me so much incredible information. So she gave me the name Hildebrand.
Hildegard?
Hildebrand.
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 Okay.
Hold on. No, it's Hildebrand. And back in the 40s, I think 30s, 40s, whatever, um, she came, maybe it was the 40s because it was after World War II. She came to the US. I think she's German. And she ended up marrying another German who came to the US, who was a professor somewhere here. And his name was Dietrich, and her name was Alice von Hildebrand. Alice wrote a book called The Privilege of Being a Woman. She was part of the Catholic religion, but not the same way that a lot of us have been shown what that looks like, right? And she talks about the divine feminine. She talks about motherhood. She talks about how the reality and the truth of who we are as women. And she talks about things like you were saying, you don't have to, it was a missionary or something brought into this country where you have to get married and you have to have 2.5 kids and you have to have a white picket fence and you have to be, submissive to your husband and, all this stuff. She doesn't talk like that. And she's Catholic or was, and so there's more out there. If, like you're saying, if you go out of your environment and you start to look and you start to learn and you question things that really don't sit right with you, the challenge is you have to build your intuition to feel that thing that doesn't sit right with you so you can ask those questions. So what would you like to say about what I just said?
Oh, yeah, that's beautiful. As starting to, when you remember hearing the stories about the women who were considered witches in Salem, um, and you wonder, oh, would I have been considered a witch? Because, intuitively, a lot of us are like, we can sense these things. Is that what that was? There's so many creepy things that we were given that they tell us this is what you shouldn't be like, or even this is what you are as a woman. You're supposed to be like this, you're supposed to be like that. And submissive was a huge word, but I didn't like being a woman, Carolyn. I thought, well, men just use us.
Mhm.
We're objects. Not me though. I wasn't skinny enough or pretty enough. It's a certain type of women from the movies. And that was also in the church. There was this whole trope about the smoking hot wife. The pastors, some of them would say this. I actually heard it in one of my churches. Look at my wife. She's so smoking hot. They thought that that was cool to say because there was a famous pastor who had said it, but it's gross
Mhm.
because oh, my wife is so hot. You are attracted to her and you find her beautiful, great. But by you saying those words, and it goes for how we speak to about men too, right? But specifically for women, when all we're given is your beauty is the only important thing, we hear that just constantly, right? In the marketing. We went out for lunch with some friends, and the one woman didn't want her picture taken, and her husband was like, I don't understand. And I said, can I explain it to you? And I was like, yo, this is why. Because women, it was fun. I was on a
That's
roll.
cool.
But
Yeah.
I said, because we have been told by the companies that we're not pretty enough, that we need this makeup, we need this hairstyle, you need to look like this, your clothes are this and this and this. And we watch these movies and TV shows where the men are like, oh, they make derogatory comments and they talk about how, you know, sexually, like you're this and this and this. And it's like, so of course we don't know what to do because maybe we don't look like that. Maybe we struggle. And when we're told women, well, we're against each other because we're vying for the men. So we have been conditioned to be against each other. We've been conditioned to believe we're not good enough, constantly in our faces 24/7. And he was like, oh, Uh, but this is the thing. So, anyways, when I started, I just didn't like, oh, I'm embarrassed of my body and this and this. And it's like, it wasn't until I read Louise Hay and listened to her speak. And she said, love your body, love being feminine.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, and I know this might sound crazy to some people, but that was really helpful for me to accept me as being a woman because I was just like, oh, I'm not pretty enough to be a woman.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I'd like to throw something in here because it's nowadays it's kind of challenging to talk about man woman because there's so many different genders that people feel that they are. But the same thing holds true. It's like love yourself for who you are. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks about you or you have to prove yourself to people. None of that matters. Like even whether you're, you know, LGBTQ plus or whatever. We just had an event down here in Florida last weekend or this past weekend where they had a fair or something. I don't know what was going on. I just know that the streets were closed off. This was hard to drive around. But I I don't I feel like all of us have the right to be here. All of us. It doesn't matter what you believe, who you love, all this kind of stuff. And I'm probably, people are going to be like, because I said that, but we're people, we're humans. But the thing is that we shouldn't have to fight so hard to get other people to believe that about us. We get to believe that about ourselves. Just like you're saying with Louise Hay, it's like when we start to feel that innate right to be who we are inside of us, none of that crap matters. None of it. And we don't have to prove it. We don't have to force it. We don't have to do anything. We walk through life and you're like, if you don't like me, be my guest, that kind of thing. Now, there
Yeah.
are people who struggle with that, and that's understandable. And the support definitely is needed to heal that. But there's got to be a better way of doing it than having to fight everybody to prove that you're good enough. I think that's kind of where I'm going with that. So
Yeah. And once you can love yourself, and that, people say, well, just love yourself. It's not easy when you don't know how, when you
right,
didn't love yourself. That has taken me, it takes healing,
right.
basically.
Well, you were never
Um,
taught because the people who you loved the most and trusted the most really didn't love you. They were loving what they were telling you or whatever.
yeah.
But they went through trauma. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Generational trauma. I see it, passed
Yep.
down.
Yeah.
But when you love yourself, you're right. It doesn't really matter what other people think. But
Yeah.
man, I lived in that people pleasing. What do other people think of me for so long? It's miserable and it
Mhm.
caused more anxiety.
Mhm. And what
And
would you
so
rather?
that's why it's so wonderful coming out of it. You're just like, oh,
Right.
I feel free.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like and expansive and not contracted and not hiding and not pretending to be somebody that you're not and all this other stuff. And it's like, so what? Like I remember, I think when I met you on video, I think you had your hair dyed purple or
Um,
a
Pink?
couple of months
I
ago,
did,
pink, pink.
or red. Like I've,
No, it wasn't red. I think it was pink. I don't know how many times, but I was like, "You go, girl. I can't do it. I don't feel comfortable doing it myself because I like my hair color, but and maybe there's other reasons, but it was like I love it when people do stuff like that. It's like you're showing your who you are. This is who you are. And if somebody doesn't like it, okay. So so I'm wondering, how did your personal healing journey shape the work you do now and how it supports other people? And maybe give an example of what you do.
So it kind of, so I'm 45 now. When I was in my 20s, I used to listen to a lot of this program called Focus on the Family, which is
Mm-hmm.
conservative evangelical. And they always had a lot of people coming on and talking and even going to different churches and speaking. And I remember thinking, I want to do that. Now, I was still very scared of speaking in public because that was a thing as a kid. That was the worst thing ever, was getting up and speaking in front of people.
Number one fear of humans. Number two is death. Interesting.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
But now it's what I've been wanting to do for 20 years. But of course, I had to start small, right?
Ooh.
Because I still didn't feel seen. I still didn't have that. But I wanted to really empower young girls because as I started learning in my 20s, I mean, I've been on this journey for a long time, but it really started in my 40s, like developing into healing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I was like, oh my goodness, I know what it felt like to be a young girl and a teenage girl. And I want to be able to encourage others. So, anyways, but I was working at a bank. I went back to school to study psychology and I switched to philosophy. And I was always still struggling to find what am I fit for.
You've come
Yeah,
full,
I actually went back to school. I was going to
full
study
circle on that philosophy. Okay, go ahead.
I was going to study psychology to become a therapist or counselor or something, but
Yeah.
then I thought, I don't know if I can do that and tell people like, or work with people like that. But in 2016, I joined the John Maxwell team and I got certified as a coach and speaker. But
Okay.
I still had so much more work to do because I still wasn't in that place of, you see people do it, but yeah, to be an effective coach, a therapist, and counselor, you can get your degree doesn't mean that you're good and understand it because you have to do the work in order to fully help people.
Right.
I've
You're
seen
supposed to
people
the
who are
work.
just like,
The work means you have to do it yourself so you can understand, right?
yes.
Right. Okay.
So and then it was starting to deconstruct the
Mm.
faith that I had been raised in. And then I was angry because that's part of the grieving process. But I started my podcast in 2020 because I was doing voiceover. I was studying voiceover because I had left the bank. I've been different places.
It's okay. Me too.
But the podcast, I was just like, oh, it's just fun talking with people, and I'm just going to interview. And then I realized I love just talking with people and getting in front of the mic. And then I was trying to figure out what can I do? And I wasn't ready yet for anything. But last year I was like, I enjoy, I've always enjoyed kind of teaching, training, mentoring.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm not the kind of teacher that gets in front of the class and teaches like that, but guiding people through
Mm-hmm.
whatever, or, I have patience with people. I have more patience with adults than I do children. It's funny.
You
So
know, it's,
anyways, last year I was like, oh, I'm now ready to take that certificate I got
mm-hmm.
and start doing something with that. So, um, and then I've been doing a lot more speaking, like on certain apps. I do live talks and get more practice. And I thought, yeah, this is the thing I've been manifesting since I was younger. But because you have to go through this journey to be in that place where it will manifest. Because if I was still that scared person, I'm not going to be a speaker.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not going to be working with people. I'm scared of you.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is like when you're in that space, your subconscious still manifests. It just manifests what you don't want instead of what you do want. So you're always manifesting, you're always creating, but you're creating and manifesting from a space of fear, which will attract things into your life that will cause fear, so or whatever is the you know opportunity of the moment, to give you that chance to see what that is. So in essence, it's not like life or God is coming, um, to punish you or any of that kind of stuff. It's your own growth mechanism, your ego, or not your ego, but your subconscious and your spirit bringing these things to you to show you what it is that is happening. And if you're even this much aware that it's like, oh, well, that's interesting, it helps you to come into that space of being of doing the work on yourself and healing and creating that higher vibration energy within yourself to manifest what you want rather than what you don't want. So if you've ever repeated bringing things into your life over and over again, apparently the universe has given you many opportunities to recognize what it is that's happening within you so you can change that. That's still manifestation. So I just wanted to make sure from my own perspective that's kind of the way it seems to work. So yeah. So yeah, that's beautiful. And I love the fact that you do it. I actually have a degree in mass communication. So I did radio and television. I didn't get into it because I was afraid also. I was afraid, fear of being seen, fear of not being seen, fear of being heard, fear of not being heard. So it's there, it's real until you shift it. But this, I love this. This is like one of my favorite things to do. It just gives you energy even when you're tired. So,
Oh, and sometimes, yeah, when I'm a guest on a podcast, there was this one where it was a live and he had a TV show
I'm
and
still not
podcast. Well, it
live.
looks kind of complicated, but
Yeah.
it was live and he's like, I got this many, places it goes. And and then he puts you on the stage for 3 minutes to kind of share, or 60 seconds and he's like, boom, you're on. And right the day before, Caroline, I almost like I wanted to cancel. I'm like, I'm too nervous to do this. But when I'm doing it,
Yeah.
I it's so much fun. And actually, when I was 14 years old, I got baptized and I was terrified because you have to get up in front of the church and read your little
Mm-hmm.
testimony. And I was terrified. And yet, when I was doing, well, right after, I was like, that was fun. Can I do it again? And that's when I look back at the things, it was so scary to do. But afterwards, I would say, can I do that again? Because that was fun. And that was me knowing that I enjoyed this,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm going to have nerves. But it's also like if you're getting lit up, you can be tired before, and all of a sudden you're
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
boom, this lights me up.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there's another piece to that too. And it's interesting. Thank you for bringing that up. But it's like the thing that we're most afraid of is probably the thing that we most need to be doing, right?
Yes. Oh
And
my
and it's
gosh.
yeah, and it's like, and it took me a long time to figure it out, but the reason that we don't do it, one of the reasons at least, and for me, when people tell you, like I loved singing, I love music, I love doing this kind of thing, but when people start telling you and you trust that person and they're telling you, oh, well, you suck, or that's not good enough, people aren't gonna appreciate that. You're not doing it right, or whatever that is, you're going to start to second guess yourself. And then you're going to start to fear the thing that you love the most, which is going to create that space for you not wanting to do what you love. And so when you don't want to do what you love, then you're not expressing yourself in the way you're meant to express yourself on this planet. And when you figure that out and you heal that part of you, then you can start to express yourself. And then you come out more authentically because that's who you are. If you watched any of my videos from years ago, I mean, I'm just sitting there going, I was so scared to talk because I thought I was a fraud. I thought I didn't know what I was talking about. I thought because that's all I've ever been told, and you shift that. You get to shift that. And that's part of this process. That's why, what Stephanie's been through and what she's experiencing and what she's, bringing to the surface, what you're bringing to the surface, what you're bringing to people is proof positive that it's doable, right? You can feel as
Yes.
not good about yourself as you want to, but she's doing it, right? So obviously it didn't stick.
And when I was younger, I remember hearing somebody say, oh, I used to be very shy and I hated public speaking, and now I do it. And they said, yeah, you might be thinking, yeah, right. You always were good at it or whatever. And they said,
Yeah.
no. And I remember thinking, yeah, right. And now I understand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, I was that kid. Whenever speech class came around, or speech during class, we had to do, it was the worst thing ever. And I felt so sick. I'm like, I don't, and I would just stand up there reading my cue cards like this, and I wouldn't look at anyone. And now I'm like, yay, hi.
Yeah. Say
But
whatever you,
that's
yeah.
30 years later, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and it's interesting. I'd like to ask you this question because we've got this stuff going on, and I might be jumping off in a different direction, and that's okay because that's what happens.
Yeah.
But I'm curious because conversations are so important, and for us to be able to understand each other, and for us to be able to even want to understand each other, and not feel so divisive, and not feel so polarized, and not feel like we're separated, which we are at this point in the world. There's a lot of separation going on, and I feel like, from my experience, that's not who we are. We're all one. We all bleed the same color, red. Doesn't matter what we look like on the outside, doesn't matter where we live, doesn't matter what language we speak. We are all living on this big rock that's floating in space, that if she decides she's going to have a million earthquakes, we have no control over that. You know what I'm saying? So narrow it down a little bit, like in today's world, with all the things that are going on, all these conversations can feel like they're so polarized. How can someone start practicing nuance and listening to others better or with more grace, even when they disagree?
Well, I would say first take a deep breath because
Yeah, there's that.
your feelings are gonna come up. And I was that person because I'm an HSP, highly sensitive. So when somebody else starts getting
That's how we
starts
make.
getting emotional, I would always feel it, and I didn't know I was in a good mood. What happened? You were saying we're all one. And one thing that really helps me is just this is somebody. I am somebody. But also just be more curious.
Hmm.
I don't there's this Franciscan priest named Richard Rohr, and he's in one of his books called The Art of Letting Go. And I think of it all the time. I don't need to win. It's not about me. I don't need to be right, or something about that similarly. Uh, because a lot of times when we're talking with people, it's like, but I want to say.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
But that causes more stress and division and arguing. And if I just sit back and go, tell me more about that and listen and just it brings down, it brings the calm.
mm-hmm.
And it takes practice.
Takes a
I'm
lot of
still
practice.
working on it.
And here's the thing: Native Americans have a thing called a talking circle where they actually use something called a talking stick, or I've used a talking stone, and you can't say a word. When someone is holding that stick, you don't say anything. You just listen and you do not think about the next thing that you're going to say. Now, us in the Western world, we're a little challenged with that. Aside from the Native Americans, and some individuals outside of that, but it's definitely a challenge and something that needs to be relearned, because when we talk through over, and I do it, I'm guilty, I've interrupted my whole life because I get excited, whatever. But it's definitely an important thing to know for sure. So yeah,
Yeah.
so thanks for that. Was there anything else you wanted to add to that piece of it?
Uh, I think just if you can remember one thing, it's be more curious. Ted Lasso says this. Go watch Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso. More links in the description, people. Ted Lasso. Is
SO,
that
I believe, yeah.
YouTube?
Apple,
Oh, Apple. Okay.
Apple TV.
Okay. So I am going to ask you some questions. My favorite question part. What do you wish you knew when you started your healing or awakening journey, if you knew what you know now?
Be gentle with yourself.
Mm,
I would just stress myself out going, I'm not there yet. I'm not learning this yet. Oh, I feel like I'm taking 3 steps forward and 2 steps back, or sometimes it feels like even more backwards. And it's just that's healing. It's
Mhm.
not gonna be, oh, now I've got it figured out. Now, cool, I move on and I don't deal with that again. It's like, no, things are gonna come up from your past. And it's the more that you can respond and handle it in a certain way, you you can heal even more quickly. And
Mhm.
that's when something comes up and I'm like having a panic attack. I remember the tools that I've learned and I go, everything's fine. Everything is working out for my highest good. And out of this situation, only good will come.
Yeah.
That's my favorite
Lots of
affirmation.
breathing, lots of breathing.
Lots of breathing and just saying that over and over again to calm
Yeah.
yourself. And I'm just like, I am overcoming this.
Hmm.
And then the next time something happens, I'm better able to handle it. So it's like it's fine. It's a
Yeah.
process and we're not going to be perfect at it. So
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely true. But
give
that's the thing.
yourself
That's why they
grace.
call it a journey. Give yourself grace. That's why they call it a journey. That's why we're human. That's why it's okay. No matter what you've been told, you can still give yourself grace and you can still be gentle with yourself. So, with individual healing work, how do you see it contributing to a larger societal transformation?
Oh, it is everything because sometimes like when we go out into the world and we bring all of our own wounding,
Mm-hmm.
we're passing that along with how we're reacting to people or what we're saying or those snarky comments. And that is our wounding. So when we're healing and we're in a place of like, you're okay with who you are and you're confident in who you are and you can like send out love to people. You
Mm-hmm.
can love that person who feels unlovable. It does get easier. I didn't know that was possible. Um, you go out and be with other people. You go out in your community and that flows from you.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. That's
So it starts with us and then it flows out.
yeah. Yeah. And what's interesting, thank you for that. You used a word wounding. And when you describe that, the thing that hit me just now was our wounding is not the truth of who we are. Our
No,
wounding can be generational. It can be in this, earlier when we were children. It could be anything. But the wounding that we have inside is what comes out because of the wounding. That's what spits out. It's not our truth. So that's a very powerful response because people, I feel, need to know that what's inside of us is not the wounding.
right? And
So,
it's like for me that was hugely my insecurity.
yeah.
When I was at church, like Stephanie, you're gossiping. I gossiped. I like to talk about other people because it made me feel superior because I was putting other people down because I didn't feel like I was good enough. I
Hmm.
don't desire to speak about other people in a negative way anymore. Now I'm like, I want to lift people up and encourage them. But that was from my own
Hmm.
feeling worthless.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes perfect sense because hurt people hurt people.
Exactly.
That's
Yes.
how it works. So, how would you define awakening?
That's a good question. When your brain feels foggy, mine was foggy for years. And then you come to this moment of, oh, I get that light bulb, like the
The
cartoon
aha
character.
moment? That thing? Yeah. Oh,
And then it's like that understanding is like a flower opening up and you, oh, that's cool. And then you get more and more of these and it feels like your brain just is expanding or coming
yeah.
or your
Yeah.
heart and your emotion, like everything just expands.
Yeah.
And seeing other people as not the enemy. Like it, I don't really know how to explain
It's
it.
okay. Whatever you come up with is good enough.
Okay.
That was good. Okay. And we already know where you've come from, so this is going to be an interesting. I look forward to your response to this one. from your experience, how do you understand or experience the concept of God or source now?
I have been through many different beliefs, feelings, understandings of God. And I had to not use the term God for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I was using universe, and I know I had to be careful who I said that around, because they would be like, no, 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 that's not good to say that if you're in certain spaces that I grew up in.
Yeah.
But for me, it was just, at first, it was, okay, God's out here, and then you accept Jesus in your heart, and the Holy Spirit lives within you. But it was just like, okay, do the work for me. Like you would pray, people pray all the time, Jesus, fix me. And they're not healing because we have to do the work as well. Like you have to do the work. So then people said, you are God, Stephanie.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I don't know if I feel comfortable saying that. But then when I looked at it in a different way of like, it's within you, the power is within you. That could be the Holy Spirit within you. That could be the universe within you. Whatever. So for me, it taken it different ways helped me to get a broader understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it helped me to just believe in myself. And it's not like I think I'm better than everyone else because I am God, because that's the kind of what we were told. Oh, that's what they believe. No, it's that I am now becoming fully me that I was intended to be and not being kept small, waiting for God to just fix me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that makes a ton of sense because like I just got done reading a book called I Am, I Create, and it's a question and answer session that this woman and her husband were doing. Like she was kind of channeling, not really, but her husband was sitting there and asking questions and God was answering her God, the God of how she is. And part of one of the explanations, I think I read it in that book, was like, we're particles of God. We're pieces of God. We're pieces of the earth. We're pieces of the parts of us are, whatever, all that we're made up of is the universe, space, earth, that's who we are. And that's who God is. So we are a particle of it, which means that we are it because it's almost like one of those, do you remember those, what do you call it? The dance balls, the mirrored balls that they used to have in dance halls or whatever that spun around.
Disco
Yeah,
balls.
disco ball. It's like that. It's like the ball is God. We are the little pieces of the mirrors all around the ball.
Mhm.
When I learned to understand it, similarly, that's exactly what came to me, and it made perfect sense. That makes a lot of sense. Like if Jesus is in you and Jesus is part of God, then God's in you, right? That's a naive question because I didn't grow up in the same environment that you did, but it seems similar. Is that
Yeah, but you're not part of God. God, and you have to, it's not everybody, it's only those who accept Jesus into their heart have the Holy Spirit. And then they're like, well, what does that mean? It's your conscience. And I used to question, well, other people have conscience and they didn't ask Jesus into their heart. That it didn't make sense to me fully
yeah, yeah.
how that was. But it was always like you have to ask Jesus and the Holy Spirit, like, okay, help me. When it's really like I take the steps,
Mm-hmm.
but it's getting that healing from within.
Mm-hmm.
Like I find it hard to explain in certain words.
There are no words.
There are no words.
There are
It's
no
like an
words for this.
experience.
Yeah, it's like that's exactly right. And this could actually be its own conversation because it's like it's just so beyond our comprehension, I think, as humans.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll leave it at that. Okay.
Okay.
We had mentioned earlier on about the divine feminine. We were talking about Alice von Hildebrand and some of the things dealing with that. So I'm curious as to what your thoughts are personally on the divine feminine and how do you believe its energy will support us in the future, especially in relation to the divine masculine. Now, I'm going to add a little bit to that because right now, based off of all the things that the feminine has experienced, we are in a position where we're healing and we're coming up and finding our power. So that's kind of what I'm asking is like, how do you think that energy will support us and how it's related to the divine masculine.
Well, from what I've learned and understood, like we all have the masculine and feminine energy within us, but some of it we have more or the other. And then what we've been given though in this world is like an unhealed version of the masculine, which can come across as bullyish and pushy and aggressive and supremacy and all that stuff. Which is why in sales, I never enjoyed sales because it was like big pushy Stephanie. And I was like, no, that's gross. What I think is coming, and I see this shift as well, is like attraction, law of attraction. It's gentle, it's inviting people in.
Mm-hmm.
That is the kind of sales that like people are starting to do. So the feminine energy coming into this world is bringing more of the empathy,
Yeah,
is bringing more of the uh, gentleness. And we need both, you know. We need
absolutely.
a balance,
Mhm.
nuance. So, but we have to make room for it, and it is coming forward. But I think that masculine energy still wants to
Fight.
get ahead, fight us.
Yeah, I
I
was
don't
the
know.
word that popped into my head, but here's the thing. Like you had mentioned something about the wounding of the divine or the masculine and their behavior, but women have similar like from what I've recognized, it's we've gone our pendulum like swings wildly. So we're either going to be submissive and weak and blah 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 whatever that is, or oh no, or demure or whatever the heck they wanted us to be. And then we go all the way swung over to the other side of feminism, and we're going to be just like the men so we can get equal rights and all that stuff, which is not a bad thing. But at some point, it needs to kind of end up in the middle. And to me, that's what the divine feminine is. It's the healed feminine and the healed masculine working together within and without. That's
That would be beautiful.
oh
Yeah,
my
I see the
gosh.
divine feminine sort of as like the people pleasing.
Mm.
Like, that's good for those who are receiving of the people pleasing, right? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
you're being a good woman, or like men are also can be people pleasers.
Right.
But um and so you think that that's a good thing. And yet when you realize, oh, no, it's boundaries. It's loving myself so I don't have like I'm not doing it for you. And I
Yeah.
can do things for you, but it's not to because you need it. It's because and that has been also for certain people. They're like, That's not right." Well, it is because I also have rights and I have boundaries. And I say, no, just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's wrong.
And that can be pretty challenging for empaths.
Oh,
Yeah, a
yeah.
little bit. Yeah. So, wow. If you could offer one piece of advice to someone just starting their healing journey, what would that be?
Oh, kind of like going back to what I would have said to myself, like, be gentle with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Be open, be gentle, and take time for you. Sometimes you need to take a step back. I kind of went, I need to heal. I need to learn as much as I could, and I got overwhelmed because I just was so excited. But then it was like too much, and I'd break down because it was too much for my system. So
Yeah.
kind of slow down
Yeah. Yeah.
and take time for yourself.
Yes.
Self-care is very important. But you know what? Nature is it's very helpful to just decompress.
Mm-hmm.
And also, hey, if you need to binge watch a TV show in a week, I did that too. And sometimes you feel like, oh, this isn't good. I can't be doing that because that to me was like shame as a kid. You shouldn't be doing that. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
You are where you are. You're doing fine. Like keep giving yourself grace,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
keep going. It
Absolutely.
it it's beautiful.
Yeah. Good. Thank you for that. So, how can people get in touch with you so they can find out more about you?
The best place probably would be my website, stephanieannweb.com. You can also on there you can find my social media as well. I'm on TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And we'll have all that information in the description. So if you heard something you wanted to that touched you, or you wanted to explore a little bit more, you can reach out to Stephanie. And Stephanie, is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
I just want to say this sometimes it can feel like things are so hard,
Mhm.
and we're going to go through those times. But the bigger picture is that life is beautiful. And one of the things, when I have a friend who just reminds me, she goes, just play.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes just play with life, right? Sometimes I'm like, this needs to work out. This needs to work out. I get so intense about things. And it's like, okay, I put it out there. If it comes back to me, fine. If it doesn't, it's fine. Play with life.
Yeah.
And it kind of it just helps to release that resistance to things and just have more fun with it.
Yeah. And if you get stuck in that, go watch kids play. You'll figure it out. Little ones,
Right.
like 3, 4, 5 year olds, watch them play. That'll get you on the right track, huh? That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Stephanie. I'm so grateful that you came on here, and I appreciate you so much. And I love your energy, and I love your love, and I love how you put yourself out there. And, you know, somebody's going to feel you, and they're going to respond. So even if it's just one heart at a time.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thanks, Caroline.
Absolutely. And thank you all for watching Awakening Soul Divinity. And we'll see you next time. Peace.